Dear viewers, in this story, Lytieuca, a single mother who is pregnant, faints from exhaustion after working too hard under the scorching sun. Fortunately, CEO Hung arrives just in time, quickly lifting her into his car and rushing her to the nearest hospital. Throughout the visit, he stays by her side, carefully tending to her and the baby's health. Beyond that, Hung personally cooks nutritious meals and provides a quiet, comfortable space for her to rest, showing thoughtful care like a true family member. Hung's gentle and attentive care touches Lytieuca's heart, giving her a sense of safety and warmth she has longed for. But will their relationship overcome the barriers of past hardships and differences in background? Join us to follow this emotional journey. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss any upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for watching. The scorching summer sun blazed down like a giant furnace, baking the hills where Lytieuca was working tirelessly. Her face drenched in sweat and visibly pale, she continued to lift bricks and wooden planks, determined to finish building her little wooden house, a new shelter for her and her child after countless hardships. But no one expected that her very resilience would push her beyond her limits. In a sudden moment, she staggered and collapsed in the sweltering heat and dusty hillside. When Hung arrived, his heart clenched at the sight of the petite woman lying unconscious. That image was like a knife cutting deep into his chest. Without hesitation, he gently lifted her in his arms, as if holding a fragile leaf, and rushed her to the nearest clinic. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, but his eyes kept glancing toward the woman lying limp in the back seat. Memories of her, this brave, hard-working woman, filled his mind, and guilt gnawed at him. Why hadn't he taken better care of her? Why did he let her bear everything alone? When the doctor informed him that Lytieuca was pregnant and needed complete rest, Hung froze. Surprise, worry, and sorrow swept across his face. He asked no further questions, simply took the prescription and medicine, then gently carried her back to the car. But instead of taking her back to the half-finished mountain house, he made a decision. He would bring her to his own home, where she could truly rest and recover in peace. His modern, previously cold and sterile house now brimmed with warmth. He carefully spread a soft blanket on the bed in the living room, placed her gently down, and watched over her until she fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. Then, quietly, he went to the kitchen. The scent of simmering broth slowly filled the house as he prepared a nourishing chicken porridge, thoughtfully seasoned and cooked with medicinal herbs. The sight of her frail body working under the blazing sun haunted him, and this meal was his way of helping her regain strength. After finishing in the kitchen, Hung hurried to pick up little Han from school. When the cheerful child ran out to greet him, her smile lit up the world around her. Hung bent down to stroke her hair and gently asked, "Did you have fun at school today?" Han eagerly chattered away during the ride home. When he surprised her with a new school bag, her eyes sparkled with joy, and his heart softened in an unfamiliar but comforting way. In that moment, he saw himself not just as a helper, but as a father figure, not by obligation, but by a sincere bond that had quietly formed. Back home, he found lytuca still sleeping. He placed the warm bowl of porridge on the table beside her, then sat down to wake her gently. As she slowly opened her eyes and met his soft gaze, something inside her stirred. Hung didn't say much. Instead, he scooped the porridge, blew on each spoonful, and fed her with care. In that quiet moment, no words were needed, his actions spoke volumes. In the days that followed, Hung's house seemed to take on a new warmth, gentle and full of life. The soft pitter-patter of little Han's footsteps, the comforting aroma of simple, nourishing meals, and the quiet, thoughtful glances of a man who cared, everything blended together like a gentle symphony in the middle of life's chaos. Hung didn't speak much. He made no grand promises, no flowery declarations of love. But every small act of his carried an undeniable sincerity. He woke up early to cook light breakfasts for Tieu Ca, brought little Han to school, and hurried to finish his work so he could come home in the evening to check on her, ask a few gentle questions, and simply sit and listen in silence. At night, after Han had fallen asleep, he often sat at the edge of the bed, sharing stories from his day or just quietly staying by her side, bringing with him a calmness and peace that lytuca hadn't felt in a long time. Each time she woke up, she would find a warm bowl of porridge by her bedside, her medicine lined up neatly, and a pair of caring eyes quietly watching over her. She knew clearly, Hung was gradually stepping into her life and her daughter's, not with grand gestures, but with patience and tenderness, the way only someone who truly cared would. There was one time when she insisted on getting up to clean the house despite still being weak. Hung rushed over to stop her, gently taking her hand in his. "You just need to rest," he said in a calm but firm voice. "Let me handle everything else." The way he looked at her then wasn't that of a stranger, it was the look of a husband protecting his wife, of a father who didn't want his child to lack anything. He didn't just take care of her daily needs, he quietly planned for their future. He personally reached out to a reputable construction team in the area, reviewed the design of the wooden house she had left unfinished. He chose the safest, most durable materials, wanting to ensure that the home would truly be a sanctuary for her and her unborn child. Every time little Han cheerfully called out, "Uncle Hung," and ran into his arms without hesitation, lytuca felt something stir deep inside. She had once dreamed of a home like this, one filled with children's laughter, a man who would listen to her and share the burdens of life. And now, when it was finally within reach, she felt afraid. Was this just temporary concern? Was it pity? Would it be wrong of her to let this man shoulder her pain and responsibilities? Yet every time their eyes met by chance, she didn't see pity in his gaze. She saw tenderness, understanding, and a quiet depth of worry. He never said, "I love you," but everything he did for her and her daughter was a clearer confession than words could ever offer. Each day passing in Hung's warm home, lytuca felt something she had long lost: peace. It was the feeling of no longer having to force herself to be strong, no longer worrying about every meal or sleep, no longer facing the bitter morning sickness or the dull aches deep in the night alone. Beside Hung, she felt as if she returned to the true place of a woman, loved, cared for, and protected. Yet, in the quiet late nights, when the soft light illuminated the sleeping face of little Han and the clock ticked steadily, her heart churned with restless waves. An unnamed anxiety surrounded her, drowning the sweet moments of the day in a sea full of doubt. She wondered, am I dreaming a dream too beautiful? A dream that when I wake up will only leave painful emptiness? Lytieuca was no longer sure about anything. Hung had never said, "I love you." He did everything: cooked, cared for the child, managed the house, took her to prenatal checkups, even handled her most private matters, but never confessed or promised a future. She questioned whether his kindness came from pity, from the compassion of a good man, or from a deep feeling he dared not express. She began doubting her own heart. Could she be deceiving herself, building an ideal world that reality could never sustain? Could the loneliness and lack of affection she had suffered for so long make her easily moved by a little care and gentleness? Besides, her past was still like a shadow she couldn't easily shake off. She had endured a cruel marriage, an abusive husband, and a cold in-law family. The days of being despised and tormented, physically and mentally, had deeply engraved a fear inside her: fear of abandonment, fear of being belittled, fear of not being worthy of love. She knew she was nothing special: no high education, no stable job, and a single mother pregnant with her second child. Meanwhile, Hung was a young, successful businessman from a prestigious and well-established family. There was a huge gap between them, not only financially but also in worldview. Every time she accidentally met Hung's father, Mr. Peter Nguyen, his cold eyes and veiled words made her shudder. She clearly felt the rejection, the disdain hidden behind polite social conversations. In his eyes, she was just a woman unworthy of his son, a blot in the perfect life he envisioned. All of these made Lytieuca constantly ask herself, am I worthy of someone like Hung? Does he have enough strength to cross that boundary and hold my hand till the end? Yet, her heart did not allow her to walk away. Every time Hung gently wiped the sweat from her forehead, tied little Han's shoelaces, or silently stayed by her side when she was tired, her heart fluttered with tender melodies. It was no longer just gratitude. It was a feeling of belonging, to someone, a home, a future. She was torn between reason and heart. Reason told her to stay awake, to not dream illusions, to protect herself and her daughter from any possible pain. But her heart whispered, what if this is true love? What if this is a chance for my child and me to have real happiness? And amid these inner struggles, Lytieuca had yet to make a clear choice. But she knew this man, with his patience, gentleness, and silent sincerity, was gradually breaking down all the walls within her. Although the path ahead was still full of challenges, deep down she began to believe, sometimes love does not need promises, just someone who truly stays.